we go. That's me. So Elliott Krivenko, work for CoStar, the analyst for the Seattle market, as mentioned before, cover several different property types. Today, I thought we would cover the two that I think are most impactful for the East Side with regards to this discussion, and that is the office market and the multifamily residential market. First off, we'll start with office. So in terms of the East Side, what you have here, you have the blue bar in 2023 is showing you how much we expect to be delivered. That does include this expansion here. It also does include the space that is currently on pause for build out for Amazon in downtown Bellevue while they figure out how they're going to utilize that space in light of the trend towards hybrid work. You will note that the orange bars are the net change in occupancy year over year. That doesn't match the blue bar, even though on the East Side, most of the space that's being built is pre-leased or being built for a specific tenant. We don't anticipate net absorption to match simply because there are a lot of leases coming due this year that may not be renewed. And at the same time, leasing volume just in general has slowed down. So all that said, the East Side has been outperforming with regards to the region. So here's the Puget Sound. This is the Tri-County, King, Pierce, and Snohomish area. And it's one of the most prolonged office downturns that the region has seen since the start of the pandemic, with on-net absorption going negative for quite some time. And that 2023 does include the East Side. So this is inclusive of the entire region. And so in the last couple of years, the East Side has actually outperformed quite a bit and has kind of carried the region. And as much as I hate to do the beauty contest between Seattle and Bellevue, there was a point in time when Bellevue was one of the top office nodes in the country. And at the same time, downtown Seattle was one of the worst performing office nodes in the country during this pandemic period. So that's changing a bit now. So this is I wanted to show both availability and vacancy, because availability, that's space that is currently occupied, but is currently being marketed for lease. And you can see the difference here is growing between the two. Which could imply some impending vacancy coming forward in the near future. So the vacancy rate sitting around, I think it was 7%, and availability sitting around 12% now. We had about 1 million square feet come available so far this year on the East Side. And so even though Seattle started off early in the pandemic with a lot of space coming available, the East Side is starting to, I wouldn't say catch up, but we're starting to see the impacts of the slowdown here as well. And this differs depending on what specific areas you're talking about. There are areas that are performing better, areas that are performing worse. With the announcements of the lease renewals in downtown Bellevue and along I-90 that won't happen this year. Downtown Bellevue's, the difference between vacancy and availability it goes from about 7 to a little over 20%. And for several quarters now, or several months now, availability along the I-90 corridor has been around 40%. And so you can see that here, this is the available square footage. We're at a record level as far back as we go with regards to that. And started to tick up towards the middle of last year. And then you can see that last bar shows that 1 million square feet that we added in availability early on this year as well. And then, wave of construction. This is just what's under construction in any given quarter, not the actual deliveries, just to be clear on that. We saw a shift over the last few years from the Seattle side of the lake to the East Side for construction. Most of the office construction has been happening on this side of the lake. And like I said, a lot of it has been accounted for prior to completion by specific tenants. So this provides some challenges, but it also does provide a little bit of opportunity, because what we're seeing is that the demand that we do see is in newer buildings, which the East Side has a lot of by comparison. So And in terms of foot traffic, we did see, just citing a couple of sources here, the Bellevue Downtown Association put out some figures about foot traffic during weekdays, during office hours, is about 67% of what it was pre-pandemic. And for comparison, Downtown Seattle Association has a number, it's about 43%. They use the same source, slightly different methodology. The biggest caveat with that figure is that downtown Bellevue has seen such an enormous amount of new inventory added during that time as well, and not so much on the Seattle side. And then with regards to rent growth, this is having an impact. You can see that it's flat year over year for the last ever since the pandemic. One thing that this headline number doesn't capture is we're hearing more and more about concessions. So tenant improvements, free months of rent, and that would bring that number down probably below zero. But that's something that is kind of hard to capture in the aggregate, and so what we're showing is the headline number here. But I think it would be negative if we were able to fully capture those deals. And then also, we heard about inflation earlier, and so I thought it would behoove me to include some numbers accounting for or adjusting for inflation. You can see that that number does go negative, and that's for the east side. So for the Puget Sound in general, the rent growth was negative, regardless, nominal or adjusted for inflation, pretty much wherever you look. And then looking at sales, office sales, the east side hasn't traded too much by comparison. Most of the sales have happened in downtown Seattle and Lake Union areas. But you can see it has moderated, and pricing has been shifting downward. And again, I went ahead and adjusted for inflation on this chart just for good measure. And we'll change gears. We'll talk about multifamily, and of course, these things are related. The office using jobs are a big driver for multifamily demand in the area, and with some of the shifts we've seen, we have seen the effects on the multifamily side as well. So first off, again, with our wonderful fundamental side, blue bars show what's what is delivered in any given quarter, and the orange bars are showing the net change in occupancy. You do see fourth quarter 2022 quite a bit of negative demand there. We did see a number of move-outs, and that is the worst quarter since the dot-com bust. Yeah. It's interesting because we came off of a period of record demand as well. 2021, almost across the board, saw a huge spike in demand, huge spikes in rents in almost all the markets that we cover, coming out of the effects of the recession, during or the effects of the pandemic. And during the early part of 2020, we saw an exodus from city centers, but that's largely changed, and so demand has come back to city centers by and large. So the downtowns Bellevue and Seattle. And another thing I wanted to mention was that we expect that these demand forecasts, they're sort of universal. So it's a formula that's applied throughout our database, and so it doesn't necessarily capture very micro local effects. For example, the coming of light rail, and we do anticipate that light rail stations will induce some demand, and so I would anticipate properties in those areas should outperform in the coming quarters. And so this one here, I wanted to show both stabilized and overall vacancy. When we give vacancy numbers, we do include new construction, and so it does take usually around a year or so to fill up a new building, and that creates some volatility when there's new inventory coming online. And so I wanted to show this because what we are seeing right now, 2022, we saw stabilized vacancy go up a bit, And that does indicate that that change in demand was largely due to move outs rather than anything else, rather than new construction. So, and then that affects rent growth. We saw record rent growth last year, hit double digits. And then right around August, we started to see a shift in the market with rent growth slowing down. Some of the areas that saw the greatest rent growth saw the quickest deceleration in rent growth in the region. And some submarkets we anticipate will go negative. Downtown Seattle is already seeing negative rent growth largely because of a large amount of supply coming online all at once there. But we also anticipate that some areas like Redmond and Bellevue will see a little bit of negative rent growth for a couple of quarters before turning around in the coming year. And then again, same thing for multifamily that I did with office here in regards to the sales volume and pricing. Multifamily has been a bit more steady on the east side than the office sales. But again, you do see that impact, especially the last half of 2022. I think it started to get a little harder to make deals. And you have that impact of inflation, which of course impacts the credit markets as well. And so fewer deals getting done. And when they do, there's some pressure on pricing as well. And I think we're reaching a point. I think the last half of last year, we had a lot of deals that just didn't happen because of the gap between price expectations between buyers and sellers. We're starting to see, first off, things stabilize a little bit in the credit markets, but also I think just a bit of capitulation in regards to deal making as well. And that's pretty much all I have. So we did see a shift in in the east side for the both multifamily and office markets, things slowing down. I do think that hybrid work is impacting office demand more than anything else. You do hear a lot about the headline numbers about layoffs, X number of employees being laid off. But from what I hear, it does really seem like it's companies trying to be thoughtful about how are we actually using space. Our workers are coming in 2 days a week, 3 days a week. What does that look like? How do we use the space when we're here versus when we're home, and kind of adjusting for that. And I think that's why we see, I know there's a bit of fear about, I can't speak for any individual companies because I don't actually have inside knowledge as to what their plans are. But it seems to me that, with regards to Amazon, there was some fear that, oh, do they pull out of their space in downtown Bellevue? I take them at their word that it's just being thoughtful and thinking about how do we actually use the space that we've committed to in that area. And so that's the space requirements are changing as a result. And the challenge is going to be what space is obsolete then. As I mentioned, the east side has more new space that I'm not too afraid of filling, even if it were to come available. On the other hand, there's a lot of dependency on tech companies on the east side, so that's sort of the balance there. But then again, there's potentially some labor shortages in tech, so maybe that's not such a big deal. Whereas some of the rest of the region maybe has a little bit more diversity of office using jobs. So I did put a bullet there about layoffs impacting housing demand, even though I'm talking out of both sides of my face here. But I don't think it's impacting the office demand as much. But we did hear just in regards to a few communities that they were getting around early November, started to see a lot of move out notices from folks who were either being laid off or were being relocated to other offices in the country. I think Austin and some in California were ones that we heard about. And that's admittedly anecdotal information, but then we did see that drop in demand in the fourth quarter as well, which seems to bear that out. And then, just expect, I think in the coming year, slow growth. I'm not too concerned. The east side has a lot going for it. People like the area for the schools. It's close to nature, a lot of great amenities. And I think just, there is a competitive advantage. Again, I don't like the beauty contest, but there is a competitive advantage in that I think the municipalities, government entities in this part of the region are seen as being a bit more friendly to do business with on the part of the business community. So that's definitely a positive.